Hey, welcome to episode 45 of the Coffee Squad podcast. Jake and Will here today. This is going to be the actual start of our 10-part series, the security series where we're talking about. And today, this one's going to be about the basic terminology. You know, when Jake and I are talking about risk, threats, vulnerabilities, assessments, stuff like that, this is what we're going to cover. We're going to cover exactly what we're talking about.
Boring.
It is a little dry, but you know, Jake's got that great sense of humor to keep us motivated. Me, I'm Debbie Downer, but that's all right. We'll get through this. It'll be a fun one, and then we'll get ready to just keep going with the next one with Adam and the home physical security. Yeah, so
definitions basic, right? Well,
yep, basic definitions
and realistic, and try to apply them for the everyday listener out there. And so I think that is our goal for the day of keeping it basic and keeping it real.
Absolutely. So what are you drinking this morning, Jake?
What am I not drinking, man? So I told you I'm doing this keto diet garbage thing. I've already lost quite a few pounds, but I got my little alkaline water. I got a little Waterloo.
Tap water and put some baking soda in it and put it in a bottle and charge you twice as much, right?
You know, Will, like again, there you go with that Debbie Downer crap, right? Brian, man, he was on our podcast a little while ago, but he got me on these Waterloos, man. So I know you don't like grape flavored. I love the grape flavor, man. So I got a little Waterloo grape flavor, and then, I got my Freedom Consulting mug here with Security Matters on here. I got a little tea in this thing.
What kind of a tea bag did you put in there this morning?
Man, you and teabag and listen to you. You're cracking yourself up right now. It's great. I love it. I did like a non-caffeinated chai.
What's the point if there's no caffeine?
Man, like I'm so sensitive to caffeine.
I've heard that you are pretty sensitive. So.
I am, man. So after these podcasts, I usually cry because you make fun of me so much. So, So what are you drinking, man?
I've got my new shipment of Black Rifle in, so I got Just Black. I've had it before. It's one of my go-tos. It's a medium roast.
It's called Just Black, but it's a medium roast, not a dark roast.
Well, because you're supposed to drink your coffee just black.
I'm not a coffee drinker,
other stuff too.
So there we go.
It has a little cocoa and vanilla aroma, bold, tasty notes.
You're reading that crap, man. You are reading that crap. Do you actually pick that up? Do you actually pick up that flavor? Is your palate that good and that sensitive that you can actually
can smell the cocoa and a little bit of vanilla?
Yeah.
Maybe a little buttery finish. I usually drink it so fast I don't taste it, but
gotcha.
Yeah. And I also got my Clear American lime water, sparkling water. You got me hooked on the sparkling water. And Clear American is, the cheap big box store brand.
Yeah. So I used to hate sparkling water. I really did. As a kid, like we grew up with not Perrier, but some of that little fancy sparkling water garbage every once in a while. And I used to hate it. But now these like little like flavored waters that have come out over the last few years. And I honestly think it's because of the keto diet, cutting the sugars out and all that have definitely kind of made this whole sparkling flavored water, and they're pretty dang good. I think the first one was LaCroix LaCroix, however you say it, that I ever had. So, hey, it cuts out the sugar. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a Coke, especially like barbecue, or Mexican food, like a good Coke, even a hamburger, man.
Burgers and pizza for me.
Yeah. And I love cream soda too, and root beer. So
I do enjoy a good sarsaparilla. Yeah. All right. So I know we've been, it's kind of hard to stay away from the whole political jargon because everything you see on the news right now is all political. So what do you make of this threat to all the state capitals coming, as the approaching inauguration?
So I thought I saw your face. I'm like one of the FBI's like 500 of wanted now because of your participation last week.
Negatory.
No.
No.
Anyways, so I think it's just, we talked about it a little bit last week with Josh. I think it's an absolute shame. Again, I'm all about peaceful protesting, right? And everyone has a different definition of peaceful protesting, right? We heard of peaceful protests over the summer where there was looting and burning of police station, police cars, attacks on the police. What happened last week? Honestly, I think all of them start off peacefully, and I think there's such a small percentage of just bad apples out there, right?
You get that herd mob mentality. Once one does it, everybody kind of joins in, and
and you're starting to see, like I wish, the federal government. Part of me wishes the federal government was in charge of these cities during when these riots were going on over the summer, because the federal government's not messing around. I mean, they don't care if you're a former military member, an active duty military member, a cop, a lawyer. They don't care who you are or what you are. If you broke the law and you went inside the barrier and then went inside the Capitol building, they're coming after you. And so I'm all for law and order, and you can't have a well-functioning society without law and order, and the law being equally applied to everybody.
Exactly.
So with the Capitals, I think it's a shame. Hey, I'm all for people protesting, but at this point, like, Trump conceded. Biden is the president, and let's wish him and our representatives well. I may not like the airline pilot flying me. I may have a conversation beforehand and think the guy's a total jerk, but I always wish him well to fly the plane well and get me where I need to go safely. And I think as a country, we need to put our political differences aside and our labels to the side. And this country needs healing. And I think that's the common thread out there. People I talk to, I think there's a common thread of whether you agree that Biden won the election fair and square, or whether you think it was rigged and stolen. At this point, that doesn't matter anymore. He is the president. We have a Democratic controlled House, a Democratic controlled Senate. And so let's wish them all well. Let's wish them that they take this country in the direction and make it prosperous. I look at what Trump did over the last 4 years, and I agreed with some things. I disagreed with other things. And hell, my wife and I, we don't agree on everything every single day either. So why do people think you're going to agree with your politicians on everything? I just wish them well, and hopefully they leave the country and there's healing. And so they say it. Let's see it.
Everybody says it. I think I have friends and family on both sides, and I think what I've been hearing a lot is the hypocrisy of it. They're like, let's, the one side saying let's make peace and everybody heal. Let's heal, and then the other side says, well, for the last 4 years, all you've been saying is X, Y, Z, trying to impeach, do this, do that, collusion, and there's a lot of hurt feelings, and I think over the last 4 years, there's been a lot of name calling and stuff. And I really hope that this new administration kind of leads us down the path of healing. Whether it happens or not is to be seen.
But unless you're willing,
exactly.
Yeah, people need to take responsibility for themselves too, right? Get off. Like I tell to certain family and friend members, like, get off social media and stop watching the news, because if you're letting it affect your life that much, it's a negative thing. And at what cost? You can't control it. If you voted and you voiced your opinion, you did your part, whether your candidate won or lost. If your candidate won, congrats. If your candidate lost, hey, put your big boy girl pants on and move about your day. That's, to me, you hear people throwing this word around, civil war. I've been to combat. I've been to combat, and it's not like I went to a large fire base or a forward operating base and sat there. Like, I've actually been to combat for this country, sacrificed a ton, watched my buddies sacrifice their lives for this country. And to me, you don't want civil war. And so when everyone says that, I dismiss them. I think they're complete idiots. If that's what you're supporting and pushing out. So these armed Capitol protests, if I think we're going to talk about it a little bit here, when we're talking risk, threats, and vulnerabilities, because if you live in a capital or in a major city where these protests are going on, just like over the summer, there's a risk there.
Yep.
There's definitely a threat there, and there's some vulnerabilities there, for every individual, business, and home. So, my recommendation is, if you don't live there, have no business going down there, stay the heck away until cooler heads prevail.
Yeah. So. Especially if you don't want to be caught in that type of environment, if you want to go down there and voice your opinion, do it. But by all means, we had a podcast last year where we were talking about, some precautions to take, so just go back and listen to that if you're headed up there and you're not sure what to do.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to the capital, DC, don't even bother. They're locking the roads down. Hotels are canceling reservations. I just saw Airbnb canceled reservations. The only way you can stay up there is if you have a medical appointment or some long-term thing. But, for those quick little weekends or just getting up there for the inauguration, they're shutting it down, which I think is a shame. I also think what's a shame is shutting down freedom of speech. And there's two sides of this coin, right? Everyone likes to throw out the fire. You can't yell fire in a movie theater. But let's not kick people off of free speech, off of their political opinions. And that, to me, is the scariest thing that I've seen happening in our country, is limiting the free speech, because, anyone can say, oh, well, you incite a riot. Like, that's such a generic, blasé, wide thing to say, now I could actually see, like, if someone said, hey, Will, why don't you go with your AR-15 and, go do some damage? Well, definitely remove that post, right? Like, there's no need for that. But if you're just speaking your mind and saying things are stolen and that, hey, we have to rise up and have a voice, I don't see an issue with that.
If you're talking about the app, I think the big issue with them, well, I know, but there was that one that got banned from the Apple Store, Google Play, and all that stuff. And the main issue, Parler. The main issue that I know the companies had with Parler was that their big kind of calling card, I guess, was that they didn't have moderation. You could say and do whatever you wanted, right? But at what point, when you're making threats, is there a responsibility on the company to remove it or whatever, right? That's the fine line we're trying to figure out. We're trying to walk on. And at what point can a private business, let's say like Apple or Google, say, hey, we're not going to host your app, and they're kind of suppressing that company from making a living?
And that's where people are having a hard time,
the monopolization. So there's a lot of, and especially since these companies all tend to be on one side, right?
But yet Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Iran, China, all these other what we would consider extremist organizations are allowed to use them.
But are they just are they just propagandizing, or are they actually making credible threats? And that's kind of the difference, I think, is what they're saying. I don't agree with it. I don't, but whatever. It doesn't matter what my opinion is.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to where there's actual threats, and especially with Parler, when there's no moderation and no one's taking accountability for what's being put out there. I think that's where the big issue is. My question is, how did they get rid of all this stuff so fast, but there's still all these child porn stuff going on, right? I wish that they would take the stance on child porn.
And that's where the frustration of the people is coming. And so that's why, it is frustrating. You definitely see a double standard in this country, or at least you see the news media, right? And again, we've talked about this numerous times. Like, the news media gets paid off of ratings and advertising dollars. And so I don't care if you're watching Fox News, MSNBC News, it doesn't matter. They all get paid off of ratings and how many viewers they have and how many advertising dollars they can charge. And so
that's why it's all doom and glue sells.
So if people would almost unplug, and again, I think if you have a talk, I'm always looking over here. Like, I have one neighbor on the left of me right now who's ultra liberal, and I have one on the right who's ultra conservative. You know what? We all talk.
Yep.
We have discussions. And I think when you break down the discussions and you censor, and people feel like they're being treated unfairly, you're sitting on some anger and some issues where you can only back people up into a corner so long, or a person so long, before either they quit or they come out swinging. And right now you got people that are coming out swinging, and it's not pretty. So anyways, let's jump off that doom and gloom.
Let's get back to the topic at hand.
Yeah. And, look, if you live in that area around a capital or areas that are high protest, if you can, stay away. Stay away. What's your life worth? That Air Force girl, I don't think she thought when she went to the rally, and I'm not in her head, but I don't think she thought when she went to that rally she was going to go die that day. I don't think she thought that she was going to get shot by the Capitol Police. Do I think the Capitol Police had every right to shoot her? 100%. It's a shame. It's a tragedy. But
everything that happened up there is a shame and preventable, and that's what's aggravating to me, anyways, because something like that should have never happened. So,
yeah. So let's talk some definitions, and again, these are security 101, very basic definitions: risks, threats, vulnerabilities, asset. Physical security. And stuff like that. I think we have about 10, not even quite 10 definitions we're going to go over. And we're going to give you what I'm going to hold this up, make sure everyone can see this here. So this is the ASIS Physical Security Professional, the study guide for physical security. Will, you may have to take a picture of yours and post it up later, but this is where we got the definitions from. The examples we just pulled from. So again, we're trying to make this as realistic for the everyday average small business owner, even if you're a major business owner and homeowner out there.
And once you learn these, it'll become second nature, and you'll be able to understand it's simple. And once you understand what we're talking about from here on out, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. Yep. So Jake, let's start with an asset. What exactly is an asset? Break it down.
So I'm going to give you the ASIS definition, right? And then I'll give you Jake's real simple, easy definition of how you can kind of
KISS method.
Yeah, how I do it. So according to ASIS, an asset is anything of value to an individual or organization. It can be tangible or intangible. Property such as people, physical objects, and we're talking, anything physical, right? Jewelry, art, or information. So think about, anything with information on it, whether it's a bank account or that hard drive with your passwords on there, anything.
Proprietary information, anything.
Proprietary information, exactly. So anything that you don't want getting out to the public. And simply how I usually put an asset is, what are you trying to protect? What is valuable to you? Yep. And so Will,
go ahead.
Well, let me ask you, let's kind of keep this a little personal here today. So name 2 of your top assets.
So the way I like to think about it is when I think of an asset, I'm thinking, what do I have in my house if it caught on fire that I have to get out? I have TVs, computers, stuff like that I like, but those aren't my top assets. My family, number one, right? Pets and family, those are going to be my number one asset. Get all the living things out of the house. Number 2, I have a couple items that have been passed down for me over generations that I would save, that are irreplaceable. Those are kind of my top 2 items that I would consider assets, that if something happened, that's what I'm grabbing. I'm getting the kids out. I'm getting my stuff out.
Yeah. So
what kind of artwork do you have hanging up that you would probably try to save?
So I have some really cool artwork, right? I have artwork that's been given to me, paintings worth thousands of dollars that have been given to me.
I've got some tens of dollars paintings.
Let them burn. I have, for me, just like you, right? My family. I'm always like, how can I best protect my family? And quite honestly, everything else can burn. Would it suck? Sure it would, but whatever. For me, when I used to live in Fayetteville, when I was going through the qualification courses and when I was in group and I lived there for a few years, my apartment was constantly broken into. After my first deployment, I bought a Rolex dive watch. I took it back and I just couldn't stomach how much I spent for it. I was a single guy at the time, like no big deal. But I took it back and I bought a tag dive watch instead, quite a bit cheaper. And I went down to Costa Rica. And when I was in Costa Rica, I got a call from the Fayetteville PD saying, hey, your apartment's been broken into. And they took anything they could take, they did. And anything they destroyed, they did. And so for me, it was more of like, you SOBs, right? Like, and I was gone for like another 10 days. I came home, apartment's completely destroyed. They took a screwdriver, put it through my flat screen TV. But they took that tag watch and I was ticked.
Yeah.
However, I never filed an insurance claim. I just replaced it, over time. Dumb on me. I should have filed an insurance claim. So with your assets, right? Like if it's of value, and we've talked about this before in other podcasts, but if you have something of value, that's valuable, that is tangible, and you can replace, make sure you put on your homeowner's policy. Most homeowner policies have, there's a separate policy that you can get, but that's an asset. It's something of value that you're like, damn it, like you took it. So, like you too, I have a samurai sword. My grandfather was in World War II in the Pacific, and he brought back a samurai sword that he was allowed to bring back, and it's a pretty awesome samurai sword. He gave that to me when I joined the military. So I have that. I have some other collections of weapons that I've collected from my travels, but I'd probably grab that samurai sword in my family and get the hell out.
Yeah, that's funny because one of the things that has been passed down to me is a Civil War sword. So yeah, it's kind of
really cool. Really, really cool. So I think I hope we talked about an asset enough, but it's something that you value and that you're trying to protect.
But obviously, we're guys here, but I know that my mom has passed stuff down to my sister, like jewelry and stuff like that has been passed down from the family over generations as well. So, jewelry, art, whatever you're trying to protect that is irreplaceable is how I look as an asset. So.
Yeah. I mean, so, you mentioned like paintings and stuff that I have in pictures. I would go grab a hard drive that has all our family photos, wedding photos, and everything like that, before I grabbed any of these $1,000.
Not your deployment hard drive?
That thing crashed, man. It's probably a good thing. But no, like family photos that we take every year and wedding photos that I have on a hard drive that, so that's stuff you can't always replace. So, and again, if you do have family photos and stuff, put them on the cloud too. That's another great way to secure your stuff if you're comfortable with that. So,
man, it's funny, growing up, we had, 35 millimeter, all those, pictures everywhere and the negatives everywhere. And now you just put it on the cloud and you can access it anywhere, download and stuff like that. So that's one thing about technology has made life easier and more convenient.
Yeah. I grew up in a pretty sterile household, man.
Polaroid.
We didn't have, like my mom, I think we had one picture in the house. We only had one picture in the house and it wasn't a family picture. It was some like, I don't know. I don't know. It was something that my mom had. I think it's still there. I don't know. But I grew up, it was like prison walls, man. White. Clean and white. So, hopefully my mom doesn't listen to this. I might get a phone call later. So Will, what's a threat? I talked about that. What's a threat to you?
Okay, so a threat, according to ASIS, is an indication or event that can result in a loss, damage, or unauthorized access to an asset. It can be theft, bombing, terrorism, vandalism, etc. So you want to think about, excuse me, the threat of a burglary or a break-in, the threat of a hurricane or an earthquake, right? A natural disaster. Those are all threats to you and your house and your assets. Whatever is a threat to your asset is something that can cause a loss or damage to your asset, right?
Yeah. Something that's going to destroy that asset, right? It's something that's going to either damage it, destroy it, or, in some way change the functionality of that asset. So, you brought up a natural disaster. I think you said hurricanes, right? Because we live here on the East Coast, hurricanes are constant. And I get clients and other people ask all the time, like, what do you mean natural disaster? And when you break it down to them, right, of whether it's a hurricane, earthquake, fire, tornado, flooding, like all that can damage, what you're trying to protect. It can damage your building. It can destroy your building that houses those assets. So, or, you mentioned burglary and a robbery, right? And so, burglary or home invasion robbery, that's something that's personally someone coming in trying to take it from you. And so that's a threat. So
ransomware,
perfect.
getting into your account and stuff, all that is a threat.
Yep. So for the listeners too, and think of where you live, what's going on, and what what's surrounding you. You can live in the greatest neighborhood. I know where I live is really safe, and the gated communities here get hit more often with home break-ins than the non-gated communities, and that blows my mind and blows other people's minds too. So let's even another threat could be breaking into your car, stealing your car. I know where my parents live, right? Sacramento. Great place to grow up. I absolutely loved it, but it's changed. We always had homeless issues, but that homeless population has skyrocketed. And California is a weird state. You can live in a really good neighborhood, but a few blocks away we used to call these apartments like felony flats, right? And that's where people coming out of prison or whatever, they provide them this housing to get back on their feet. And that is the threat to my parents was my dad would keep 2-car garage. So my mom's car stayed in the garage and the boat stayed in the garage, and my dad's 4Runner would stay out. He got his Cadillac converter stolen so many times. And, so think about, it's not just that robbery or whatever, it's a vehicle break-in, it's stealing something off of your property. So.
Absolutely. So that we've talked about asset, we've talked about the threat, identifying the threat. Okay. So what is a risk, Jake?
So again, we're always going to throw the ASIS definition out there. That is the Bible to physical security. It's the international organization out there. So a risk is the likelihood of a resulting loss from a threat, security incident or event. So think of going to the craps table, right? You're gambling.
Lottery.
Lottery. Like the risk of playing the lottery is you're going to lose. Let's say you throw 20. I think is it Mega Millions, Powerball, whatever. This week is going to be like the third largest.
Like yeah,
it's going to be in the billions of dollars or whatever. So, so
obviously, you can tell we play the lottery.
Yeah. So, the risk of when you play the lottery is that you're going to lose your money. The other risk is that you could get hooked on gambling. So that's how I like to look at risk, is that likelihood. You're playing the odds, you're shooting craps. Yeah. So
the way I like to think about it is the threat. Okay, hurricane, right? Since I live on the coast, you live a little farther inland, but the hurricane, natural disaster hurricane, there's going to be a threat of the hurricane where we live. Now, what is the risk to my house because of that hurricane? What kind of damage is going to happen if a hurricane hits, right? So,
what's the likelihood of it hitting your house?
What's the likelihood of it hitting my house? Yeah.
So
obviously, my risk is going to be a little higher than yours, or somebody say in California. But now earthquakes are going to be, the risk is going to be a lot higher in California than they are over here.
Yep.
If you live in Oklahoma, you probably don't have to worry about hurricanes or earthquakes. But tornadoes, on the other hand, that's a big issue out there. So.
Exactly. Let's go back to my parents' example, right? Of my dad leaving his 4Runner out in the driveway, right? The threat was it getting broken into, something being taken off of it. Yeah. Well, the risk, now that he knows that threat's out there, the risk for him is, do I leave it out there? And how much am I willing to risk, without putting up protection measures against that, and you can put a bunch of security measures up and something might still happen, but those measures, you're always trying to, detect, delay, deter, and defend, the 4 Ds. And we'll get into that next week with Adam a little bit more. But, again, think of gambling is really what the risk is. In my opinion, that's a simplified version, Jake's little way of remembering, like, hey, likelihood.
The percentage is going to happen. Like, there's a risk of a blizzard occurring here in North Carolina, but what's the percentage of it actually happening? do you, is that going to be, are you going to spend your money on a snowblower, or would it be better served to buy on a generator for when the power goes out, right? That's kind of how you weigh your risks, right? So, vulnerability. You've said that word a few times. Vulnerability, if I could get my words out. What is a vulnerability?
You need more coffee, man. Take another swig.
This is only my third cup. I'm kind of slow this morning.
Oh, man. So a vulnerability is a weakness or organizational practice that may allow a threat to be realized or increases the magnitude of the loss event. And so I think a great way to kind of put this picture up in someone's mind for our listeners, and Will, you're going to put pictures up as we on the YouTube channel for everyone. But think of a fence, right? You could have a fence. Let's say you have a chain link fence all around your property, right? And why do you put up a fence? Whether you're trying to secure something. Let's say you're trying to secure your dog or your kids from going in and out. But with that chain link fence, the top starts to sag. Someone's cut a hole in the middle of it. So now you can pull the fence apart, or you can easily push it down and hop over it real quick. Or you didn't secure the bottom all the way, and now you can kind of dig underneath. The dog's kind of dug, and now you can escape out. Or let someone in. So think of that, the fence as your a poorly, not designed isn't the right word, but an older fence that has a lot of wear and fatigue on there. That's a vulnerability. And the 4 Ds, that I mentioned earlier. But now that fence isn't really deterring someone. It's not going to delay them nearly as much as a fully functioning, well-maintained fence. And so
it's gone to a nice layer of security to becoming more of a vulnerability because it no longer does its job.
Exactly. So it's a practice, right? Someone put up the fence for some reason to keep something in or out. But now because of time, wear and tear, whatever it may be, vandalism to it, that fence isn't functioning like it could be. And now that increases the chances and the magnitude of that event.
So we were talking just a few minutes ago about break-ins to cars. Something as simple as not locking your door becomes a vulnerability. If you're not practicing by locking your door in your car, it is now more vulnerable than it was before if you had locked your door. And I would take reports all the time. People had their cars broken into. There's no damage. I've caught people. They walk around down the street just pulling on door handles, and once they find one that's open, they open it up and they ransack it and take whatever they can. Crime. A lot of crime is crimes of opportunity. I know you guys have heard me say that before. So something as simple as locking your door prevented that from happening to you. Whereas two cars down, they didn't lock the door. That car got broken into.
Yep. So with these 4 definitions, right? Risk, asset, risk, threat, vulnerability. Think of like a Venn diagram, right? So you have your asset stuck in the middle, and then you have risk, threat, vulnerability on another side. And they all usually interlock some way or somehow. So
yep, that's good. That's a good illustration of it. You got those little crossovers where assets in the middle, and all of those are kind of intersecting, and that's what you're using to identify your asset and what you need to do to protect it, right? What's coming at it, and now what do we have to do to protect it? And that's what we're going to talk about over the next few weeks. Next couple of weeks with Adam, we're going to talk about how to physically secure, right? Then next month sometime we're going to have Cliff come on, and we're going to talk about cybersecurity, how to do the network security type stuff around your house.
So another vulnerability too you could think of is if you
using a password on your home Wi-Fi network.
Yeah, or if you use the same one, or you use a Wi-Fi password that comes with your router, right? Change that up. And so Cliff's going to talk about all that stuff, securing your social media accounts. So I'm really excited. This is what I would consider kind of the boring side of this series right now. But I think for our listeners, whether they come in at episode 9 of this series, or they started day 1 with Josh, they can always go back and listen, and now they'll understand, okay, hey, this is a risk, this is a threat, this is a vulnerability, and these are my assets. And we can go from there. So
I know you've said it a lot over the year now. We've almost been doing this for a year. Time flies, right? But what is physical security exactly?
So physical security just describes the security measures that are designed to deny unauthorized access into or out of a facility. We're looking at how do you protect the facility itself, equipment, the resources, and the personnel and property. So physical security is anything that is tangible and you can touch.
Okay. And that's the security you're putting in place to protect your assets from the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
So, see how we all build this? It's like one big foundation we're building for everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
we all know somebody who's been broken into or affected by a natural disaster. So let's say your car, right? Locking your door is part of physical security to alleviate the vulnerability that is protecting your asset. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So I want to give some stats
system, right, on the car. So the alarm system, right? That is a deterrent from someone messing with your car, and it also alerts you of, hey, someone's messing with your car. Now, if you don't set that alarm on your car or on your home, you can still have the stickers up there that's a deterrent, but it's not nearly as effective. So again, you're increasing that risk when you don't implement some of the measures that most of us already have in place. We just don't think of them all the time, or we're too lazy to do it.
I want to give some stats out here. They're a few years old. It's from 2017, but it is from DOJ FBI statistics. In 2017, there was an estimated 1.4 million burglaries, which is quite a bit. I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot, but that still sounds like a high number for burglaries, and that's reported burglaries. Because I know in a lot of areas, burglaries don't go reported. I know we had a big issue with immigrants, illegal immigrants, alien, whatever you want to call them. They would not report crimes to us. So burglaries is bad, but there was a lot of serious crimes they wouldn't report to us because they were afraid that we were going to treat them poorly because of their resident status. Obviously, we don't. That's not our purview, but whatever, so there's that is kind of a low stat, would be my guess. But burglaries did account for 18.2% of the estimated number of property crimes. So property crimes, is like burglaries, vandalism, stuff like that.
I mean,
almost 60% right, of burglaries involve forcible entry. So,
that's we have about 33 million people here in the U.S. or 330 million. I'm sorry.
Yes, 300. I think it's over 300 million. So. He's trying to do some math.
It's painful, man. Uh-oh. Hold on. Keep talking.
He's going to take off the leg and start counting toes. But so 36.2% were unlawful entries, which is like opening the door of your car. It's not forcible. I mean, you just open it, right? Victims of burglary offenses suffered an estimated $3.4 billion in property losses in 2017. That's why our insurance rates are so high, honestly. Average dollar loss per burglary offense is $2,400. So, if somebody breaks in your house, think about losing, close to a little over $2,400. So,
and I think the big thing, the takeaway with these numbers, all right, this is 2017.
Yep, it's only going to go up. Property crimes obviously went up in especially business districts in like Seattle, Portland, stuff like that. That skyrocketed this year with all the peaceful protests that happened.
Well, then you have a downturn of economy, right? So that's only going to increase. We also have a drug pandemic in this country. That also increases. So again, look at your surrounding area, right? Do you live in a major city? Is there a big homeless drug issue there? And now because of COVID and small businesses having to shut down, so there's these threats that just keep layering and layering and layering. And, you start building this picture out of, wow, maybe I'm not as safe as I am. Or maybe you live in a great little area and you're like, you know what, compared to others, I'm doing pretty good. However, these are some steps that I can take to protect myself and my family and my neighbors a little bit more. And that's really what we hope to, for everyone to get out of this podcast is how do you protect your little piece of the pie?
Your slice of heaven. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of covering physical security. So let's move on to technical security. What is technical security? When we talk about technical security, what is that?
So when we say technical security, think of your computers, anything wired, right? Electronic. And so how are you securing those? So it's a series of techniques used for, how are you authenticating and protecting against the theft of data, information, and whether that's a hack to your personal email or even a corporation, that's what you're looking at, even your small businesses. So how are you protecting the technical side of the house? And so, we always talk about with us, we have, the physical security, you have human influence, and then you have the technical influence. And so most machines don't malfunction and give out information on their own. There's either a human aspect of that or a theft, a physical side of that. And so the technical side is your cybercrime, theft, stealing of intellectual property that's stored either on the cloud or some server database somewhere else, or, theft of passwords, email addresses, your PII, your personally identifiable information. People don't realize how easy that it is I am not a cyber guy. I am nowhere near Cliff and his skills. But it is very easy to identify people,
Mm-hmm.
you can look at so there's a difference between, and we're kind of getting off track here, but you have your personal identifiable information, your PII, and then you have what's called PAI, which is publicly accessible information. And that PAI,
Open source.
all open source. So when you buy a house, that information's out there. When you register your car, that information's out there. If you've been in an accident and the newspaper reports it, right, and they can get that police report, they can give your name and then what hospital you were transferred to, and then you can look through hospital stuff and realize, okay, he's at this hospital. And it takes someone to do their digging and their research, but it's pretty easy to pull someone's PII if you're not careful and knowing how to secure that.
So when we're talking about technical security, you're talking about like biometrics, two-factor authentication, passwords, stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
that's all
security that we put in place to protect our technical assets.
Yeah. And when you travel too, right? I mean, we all travel with our cell phones. I just read an article today that CNN has sponsored airports. Like whenever you go to most of your major airports, CNN is always playing on the TVs. They've stopped that, and they pay, usually most airports, they pay for the TVs, they pay for that. That's kind of their way of advertising their service out there, but they've stopped that. And, one of the reasons, I imagine some of it's financial, but look, when I go to the airport, I'm sitting here on my cell phone. I'm not really watching the TV unless it's a sports, something with sports. So, when you're using free public Wi-Fi, what are you accessing and how are you accessing it? When you travel, and this is all stuff we'll get into later on with Cliff and others, with travel security is, don't log into your bank account. Don't log into anything that will give out your personal identification
on a free.
And if you do, apps are a great way to use it. Use, like you said, two-factor, multi-factor authentication. Use these steps and these barriers. Change your passwords. Don't use one password or 3 passwords for everything out there. Use a password protection service to go out there. So that's what we're talking about. And Will, I know you had some stats here that is pretty amazing.
So this came from review42.com. So they estimate that by 2021, which is this year, so by the end of this year, cybercrime will cost the world $6 trillion. I mean, that's hard to fathom how big that number is. People don't realize how big that number is. By 2021, a business will fall victim to ransomware every 11 seconds. Now, I think that's that's, one hack of thousands of businesses occurs. And then, that's how they average that out. But that's still, 11 seconds,
It's a lot.
Okay, somebody got hacked, right?
Yeah.
Americans lose $15 billion annually due to identity theft. And that's what we're talking about. I know these like little Facebook quizzes and stuff like that. Hey, what was your first pet's name? What is your mother's maiden name? If you guys ever pay attention, that's a lot of your security questions on your banks and stuff like that are very similar or the same to those questions on those quizzes.
So they're also phishing for your identification too.
Phishing, yep, excellent. 1 in 36 mobile phones had high-risk apps in 2018. it takes 196 days on average to identify a data breach. So 126 days, that's more
96
than
days,
half.
196 days.
Yeah, 196 days.
That's a
So
half
that's
year.
what? Yeah, 6 months. That's a long time. People can get a lot of information, can do a lot of damage with that information and access. Roughly 6.85 million accounts get hacked each day, or 158 seconds. So that's that's a lot. So since the cybercrime numbers have risen since then, it's safe to assume that the number of accounts getting hacked daily has likely increased. So
So, Will, I got a Facebook invitation from you last night,
no, you didn't.
even though we're already friends, right? But no, so I'm totally joking around. I didn't get another Facebook or social media invitation from Will, but that's a very common one. I would say that out of my friends on social media, every, I don't know, seems like a month or a few months, I get a, hey, don't accept my friend request. I've been hacked, right? So that's a simple one, right? Because I know you will, and it's like, oh, Will change his profile, or what, and we don't even think like, okay, hit accept, or you get an email, what looks like it's from your bank, and it says, hey,
Yeah, Amazon.
we're trying to get in contact with you, blah blah blah. Don't click links. Don't click links in an email. I mean, there's ways you can hover over it and look at it. The best way is just go.
Just don't click it. Go to the actual site.
Go to their actual website. Use their actual app, and do it yourself. Don't click it off of a link.
So yesterday, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine, I didn't get a friend request, but it was up there, or I did get a friend request. I'm sorry, saying that, hey, add me. And I was like, what? I was like, I just saw him the other day and he didn't say anything about it. So I called him up and said, hey man, did you change your Facebook? He's like, no, why? I was like, well, I just got a friend request from you. So he had to go deal with all that stuff with Facebook now because somebody hacked his page.
Yeah.
And you're talking about Amazon. I get emails from Amazon all the time, but it's obviously not Amazon. They're saying, oh, there's a problem with your order or your payment. Please click here. I don't ever do that. If I ever get anything, I use, I know some ways to realize it's not Amazon, but if I would always go to the Amazon.com site, not through your email link. You never do anything through a link through email. You always go to the site.
Well, and we always joke around about the Nigerian prince, but like with most jokes, right? There's some seriousness to it.
Right.
People do get scammed from that. So again, don't click links. If you don't know the person, don't accept
LinkedIn
them.
got me. So I almost clicked. I started to click on one, but luckily my my ransomware and my VPN kicked in. I had just woken up and I saw something from LinkedIn. I just clicked. I wasn't even thinking, and as soon as I clicked, I was like, "Uh-oh!" But luckily my precautions kicked in, and it said, "Yeah, this is a suspicious or whatever link," and it didn't let me go to it. And I was like, "Oh yeah, thankfully I had the proper security in place." And yeah. So, even when we're diligent, we sometimes, we have an oopsie. So that's why you have those layers in place to help protect you.
Yeah. And so cybersecurity and physical security are very, very much alike. You always want to push that threat out as far away as you can. And then you want to put obstacles in the way to slow them down, to identify who it is that's trying to attack you. And then you always want to have, your stuff secured in a safe, your assets secured in a safe place that you make it extremely, extremely difficult for them to get. That's why Will, you mentioned VPNs, we've mentioned two-factor authentication. These are all steps to help lessen the risk to your asset.
Yep.
So
I know I just slipped out a little bit about my diligence, and I know this is your favorite topic in the world. So I'll let you explain what due diligence is.
Perfect. So those have listened in the past, and if you're continuing to listen to me, you're going to hear me every single time talk about due diligence. I do these reports quite often for the company, and due diligence is an investigation. It's an audit. It's a review, and we do them to confirm facts or to get a better understanding of whether that person or whatever it is that we're looking into.
Doing your
whatever.
homework or research is how.
Yeah, and simply, you'll hear me say due diligence is just do your homework. I always like to bring up buying a house or buying a car, but those are really, in my opinion, those are some of the best. Like, I like to dumb everything down. I'm not a smart guy. I'm a knuckle dragger. I was a weapons guy on the teams for a long time before I got in the intelligence side.
Don't let them fool you.
But by doing that homework, and using the house or car analogy, I think really breaks it down. It keeps it realistic and easy for people. When you buy that house, you should want to review who your real estate agent is. How good are they? Whether you're selling or buying the house,
Mm-hmm.
What are their fees? What are their customers, previous customers saying? And so that's like the very start, in my opinion, of, okay, hey, I'm selling a house, I'm buying a house. What real estate agent do I want to use? And there's so many great apps out there to help you with that and to figure out kind of to help you do that homework. Lightstream, you have Zillow, you have realtor.com. You can go to their actual website. You can, the internet is a great thing when used properly to do your homework. So there's a lot of misinformation out there too. So that's part of doing your due diligence. It's not just going to the same website every single time and saying, it's gospel because Dr. Google said it is. You got to look around it and understand what your biases are and the biases of other people out there.
I try to do the rule of three. So it's kind of what I try to live by when I'm researching stuff.
Yeah.
I'll go 3 separate independent sources before I make kind of my inference on everything. So,
yeah. And then, so going back to so now you have a real estate agent now. And so you're buying a home or you're looking for property for your small business, or you're going to rent, a space for your small business, whatever it is, whatever that location is, do your due diligence on the area. What's the crime rate like? What's physical crime rate? What's, the crime in the neighborhood? What's outside the neighborhood? And then you do that. Now you can narrow it down, right? And again, all this costs money, right? So what's within your budget? What can you afford, and what are you comfortable spending? And then, from there, then you start looking at houses. And again, from personal experience, the first house I bought where I just loved the area. I had a good real estate agent. However, I didn't realize the amount of traffic that flowed through.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was fine. I was a single guy, and then, newly married, living there. But once my wife was pregnant with our oldest son, I was like, we're not living here anymore, because of the traffic amount. I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't do my homework of going out there during, school and work hours to and from to notice that, hey, people use this road as a major cut through. And even though the speed limit is 25, they do 45. And now that I move away from there, and it's only like 2 miles from where I currently live now I'm that jerk.
Now you're driving 45 through there.
And I always have to watch myself like, okay, hey, I'm going into the neighborhood, slow it down. So just, you can do your research, but then also physically show up at different times. Whenever we do a security assessment, whether it's, for a high net worth individual or a company, we always show up at all different hours, and so do that same thing when you're buying a house, same thing buying a car, test drive many of them,
Rush
look
hours,
at them,
hours.
all that.
And so you we've talked about it a little bit, and I think you've done a good job explaining. So I kind of want to reiterate how all these terms tie together when conducting a security assessment, right? So what's the first thing you want to do? You want to identify your asset, right? So after identify your assets, you can then identify the risks, threats, and vulnerabilities to your assets.
I feel like we're in like the Saturday Night Live thing right now of like step 1 with Justin Timberlake, cut a hole in the box. I don't know if that's really appropriate here, but hey, step 1, identify your asset.
I love that, man. So once you've identified your assets, then you can start identifying the risks, threats, and vulnerabilities to those assets. Okay. Once you can identify those risks, threats, and vulnerabilities, then you start building your security plan, right? Then you start identifying what human, physical, technical security you need to implement to protect your assets. Yeah, I think that's kind of a simple way how we do it. Next week we're going to talk about layered security, the 4Ds, which Jake's already talked a little bit about. We're going to reiterate all this stuff over and over and over again. By the end, you're going to be like, "Yeah, guys, I know what due diligence is." Okay, you don't have to explain it to me every time, but you're going to get it, and that's kind of what the purpose is. We want everybody to learn this and understand it. So everybody's on the same page.
It's not hard. Look, if I can do it, anyone can do it. If you understand these terms and how they are used and intermixed, you're on your way. And then, I've said the 4 Ds, and Will said them again, the 4 Ds, detect, delay, deter, defend. And so if you kind of get the definitions and you use the 4 Ds, and we'll talk about crime prevention through environmental design more, you are on your way to really knowing what you need to do. And at that point, it's on you to implement. And look, Will and Will was a former cop. We're both security experts. I go all around the country, globally, honestly, to do some of these risk assessments and threat assessments for large companies and high net worth individuals. I don't always take my own medicine. And so what we want, we want to keep this as realistic as possible, as simple as possible. And also know that, hey, no one's perfect, right? And so when you're not perfect, that you just increased your risk a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, and it all comes down to what you're comfortable with, what kind of risk you're comfortable taking, and what kind of risk you can financially accept, right? Would my house be more secure if I had 10-foot wire fence with a concertina wire on the top and roving patrols? Absolutely. But
do you want to live in that?
One, I don't want to live in that. And two, I don't have the financial means to afford that. Yeah. So I'm going to have to accept the risk that my house is going to be vulnerable, because more vulnerable than, let's say, a fortress, right? So,
yeah. And so, that's a great point, Will, and so look at your budget, right? And then look at aesthetics. Do you really want a chain link fence with concertina wire and razor wire up top? Do you want all around your house? Do you want a fence all around your house? And some, yes, you look at high profile people. Absolutely. They all have huge walls. They have motion detectors. They have all this technology and everything there. And why is that? Well, there's more of a threat to them than to you and I. No one knows who you are and I are, for the most part. And so who knows, maybe the Coffee Squad podcast is going to blow up so big, man. Well, Joe Rogan's going to ask to come on our show. Doubtful, but
I'll put in a moat with alligators and a drawbridge then.
Yeah. So again, it's what makes sense. Keep it simple. That's my biggest rule. Keep it simple. I do this for a lot of high net worth individuals. I've done it for schools and churches. And the one thing you don't want is to look like you're going into a prison. And there's ways. There's easy ways to do it that you can do. I shouldn't always say easy, but there's ways to do it. You just got to get creative, and then have a budget for it. So,
well, I think that was a good little kickoff to our series. Next week, we're going to have Adam on to talk about kind of the Home Security 101, Part 1. It's a 2-part series with Adam. Make sure you go to www.coffeesquadpodcast.com, and you can access all of our stuff there. And yeah, I appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, don't forget YouTube too.
Yeah, you can access either YouTube, or you can access it through our website. So just go to our website, click on videos, and you can access all our videos there. So one-stop shop.
And leave comments, please, like questions, comments there. I know we got one yesterday from Tim. I totally appreciate it, Tim. So thank you. And anyone else out there, man, if I forgot you, I'm sorry. I just remember seeing Tim up there yesterday on YouTube. So yeah, leave questions out there. We'll definitely respond to you guys.
All right. We will see you guys next week. Stay safe.
Have a good one.